My girlfriend's reckless jealousy cost me my leg, then she dumped me because I was crippled. So I let her leave. Years later, she is back only to ask me for this, so I took. They say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I guess that was true for me, until it started costing me everything. My name is Jacob. I'm 31 years old, a marine biologist living in the Florida Keys. From the outside, my life looked like something out of a magazine spread. Sleek two-story beachfront house, solar panels, a hybrid boat docked out front, and a job most scientists would kill for, studying coral reef recovery in the Maldives. I worked long hours, but I loved every second of it. Nothing beat diving 30 feet down, watching life pulse back into damaged reef beds, knowing I was part of something bigger. I stuck to a tight routine. Up before the sun, protein smoothie, 2-hour free dive, then hours logging data, running analysis, or prepping for the next trip overseas. My best friend Dylan, who'd been my dive partner since college, called it extreme monk mode. He wasn't wrong. Angela hated it. Angela was my girlfriend, 28, gorgeous, a luxury travel influencer with almost 2 million followers. We'd been together 6 years. When we met, she was doing sponsored photo shoots in the Seychelles. We had one of those whirlwind connections. She liked my focus, my discipline. I liked her energy, the way she made the room feel warmer just by walking into it. But lately, things had changed. She started calling the Keys the middle of nowhere. Said she felt like she was fading here. Too few people, too much salt in the air, too little Wi-Fi. She said it like a joke, but it wasn't. I knew the truth. She missed the spotlight. She missed being seen. And more than anything, she resented that my world didn't revolve around hers. That afternoon had been perfect, the kind of day that reminded me why I chose this life in the first place. Dylan and I had gone out just before dawn, collected reef samples off the coast of Big Pine, and spent nearly 4 hours swimming with a pod of spinner dolphins that showed up near our buoy line. We even filmed a few clips for my grant sponsors. By the time we got back to shore, I was sunburned, salt-streaked, and completely blissed out. Dylan clapped me on the back, joking about cold beers and our glory days. I laughed, told him I'd take a rain check. Angela had a big live stream dinner with a new sponsor, and she needed me home early. I walked into the house just past 7. Angela was standing in the kitchen, dressed in the seafoam green silk wrap, makeup perfect, camera lights already glowing behind her. She didn't look at me, just pressed a button on her phone and hissed, "You're late." I told you I might be. We had to do a full transect sweep. "I don't care about fish, Jacob," she snapped, still not looking up. I had to stall for 30 minutes. My followers were waiting. The brand was waiting. This was important. So was the reef. But I didn't say that. I just stood there, feeling the salt crust drying on my skin, and watched her reset the ring light. I could hear the wave break outside our window, feel the tension thick between us. It hit me then, how perfect everything looked from a distance, and how fragile it really was up close. The argument started the same way they always did. Small sparks, then an explosion. Only this time, the stakes were higher. Angela was already irritated. The live stream had been a disaster, and I had no idea how badly she had been fuming all day. I knew something was off when she pulled out her phone to scroll through the comments while I was still taking off my dive gear. "Jacob, do you even care about what I do?" she asked, her voice tight, but trying to mask the anger beneath. I froze, wiping salt water from my face. "What? Of course I care. Do you?" she repeated, this time loud enough to catch my attention. "Because all I see is you caring about your coral reefs and your research, while I'm over here trying to keep this brand afloat and make a living. And what do? You disappear every weekend, chasing fish while I handle everything here alone." I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked. "I'm not disappearing. This is important, Inch. This is my life's work. Yeah, and I'm over here, stuck in this damn house, acting like a fucking prop in your life, when you should be supporting me, too," she shot back. Her words were more venom than usual, but I knew it was coming. Every time I had a trip scheduled or was out diving, it seemed like I was neglecting her. "I'm not neglecting you," I said, trying to calm the storm brewing in her eyes. "But I can't be everywhere at once, Angela. I have commitments too. You knew what this life was when we started." Her hands were shaking now, and I could see the frustration building in her chest. "I knew I'd have to take a back seat to the reef? That's what you're saying? Your reef comes before me?" "No." I shot back quickly. "It's just, everything is out of balance right now. I'm doing the best I can. You know I am." But she wasn't listening. She was beyond reason. "No. You know what? I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not staying on this damn island another day feeling like I'm irrelevant to your world." I opened my mouth to say something, but she was already moving. "Pack your bags. We're going to the mainland. I have a meeting with a sponsor in Miami tomorrow, and you're coming with me." The words cut through me like a knife. I couldn't even process what she was asking. She turned to grab her purse from the counter, but when I didn't move, she snapped, "Are you listening to me?" I took a step toward her, my voice rising. "Angela, stop. This is ridiculous. I have to be out here tomorrow for the research. This is my work. I told you weeks ago. She was livid, eyes blazing. You can't choose Coral over me anymore, Jacob. We're done with your research. You're coming, or you're not coming back to this house. It's that simple. Her words stung, but I tried to hold my ground. I'm not dropping everything just because you want me to follow you to Miami for some sponsored dinner. I'm staying here. She stared at me for a moment, chest rising and falling with every breath, and then I saw her hand dart for the phone on the counter. It wasn't just any phone. It was my satellite phone, the one I used for work when I was out on dives. Who is this? Angela asked as she flipped it open, swiping through my recent calls. Dylan? You're really going to tell me you're still talking to him about fish when your girlfriend is having a meltdown? I felt the heat rise in my chest. That's not. Give me the phone. But she was already dialing. No, she shot back. I'm not letting you make this decision for me anymore. I reached for the phone, but the damage had already been done. Angela was already shouting at the phone screen. Her foot slammed on the accelerator as I tried to grab the wheel. She was too fast. The tires squealed as the SUV fishtailed off the highway, heading straight for the dock. I don't remember hearing the crash. The next thing I remember is the feeling of being trapped. Pain. A crushing weight, like the whole world had come down on top of me. I couldn't feel my leg. I was vaguely aware of shouting. Angela's voice was distant, but I could hear her calling my name over and over, begging me to respond. She sounded frantic, but there was something hollow in her tone. I tried to lift my hand, but the pain was overwhelming, my body screaming in protest. Then came the silence, except for the water lapping against the wrecked SUV, slowly sinking into the shallow, refilled water. Jacob. Jacob, please. Angela was sobbing now, her voice raw and panicked. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a garbled mess of air. It took every ounce of strength I had just to open my eyes. It took a moment for everything to come into focus. The wreckage around me. Broken glass. A smashed dashboard. The stench of gasoline and salt water. And Angela, kneeling next to me, her hands shaking as she pressed them to my chest, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. You're going to be okay, she whispered. You're going to be okay. But I didn't feel okay. I felt broken. And then I felt it. The sharp, searing pain in my right leg. I let out a scream, trying to move, but I couldn't. The seatbelt was still holding me in place, and my leg, was pinned beneath the twisted metal of the car, wedged between coral rocks. Jacob. Angela screamed again, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the seatbelt. I can't, oh God, I can't get you out. My head was spinning. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, too thick, like I was suffocating in slow motion. But I needed to move. I had to move. My mind was screaming at me to do something, anything, but my body wasn't listening. Every time I tried to lift my leg, the pain was unbearable. I forced myself to look down. The sight made my stomach lurch. Blood. Dark, thick blood pooling around my leg, soaking into the seat beneath me. My right leg. It was mangled, twisted at an unnatural angle. Angela. Angela, I gasped, my throat dry, struggling to keep my eyes open. Help? Her face was a mess of tears and disbelief. She grabbed the seatbelt and yanked it with desperate force, but I could see it wasn't working. The car was sinking, and Angela was still fighting to free me, her voice rising in panic. I can't. I can't. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she muttered over and over, her voice shaking as she tried to unbuckle me. But her hands weren't steady, and every movement felt like a hammer to my chest. Get me out, please, I whispered through clenched teeth, the words barely making it past my lips. She paused, her hands still on the seatbelt, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at the dashboard, her face contorted with something I couldn't place. The terror in her eyes shifted to something else. Something darker. I saw her hesitate. Then, she turned to me, her face suddenly hard. It's not my fault, Jacob. You were too busy with your stupid Coral to listen to me, to listen to what I needed. You were never there when I needed you. I blinked, confused. My head was foggy, and I couldn't process what she was saying. But the look on her face, the way she said it, made my stomach turn. Was she blaming me for this? For the crash? She stood up suddenly, stumbling out of the car. I'm going to get help, she called, her voice trembling but laced with an edge of frustration. I'll be back. I swear. Don't go anywhere, okay? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her not to leave, that I couldn't move. But the words didn't come out. The only thing I could hear was the sound of her footsteps retreating, getting farther and farther away, until all that was left was the faint crash of waves against the reef. Time felt like it had stopped, like I was suspended between two worlds. The pain in my leg was unbearable, my head spinning, the blood mixing with the salt water around me. Minutes passed. Or hours. I couldn't tell. And then, finally, someone was here. But it wasn't Angela. A pair of hands were on me, pulling me out of the wreckage. Not gently. Not with the care I had hoped for. It was Dylan. He was breathing heavily, his face pale with shock, but there was something else there too. Disappointment. A familiar look. The kind of look you give someone when you know you can't help them anymore. "Come on, man," Dylan muttered, dragging me away from the car. "We've got to move fast." But it was too late. I could feel myself slipping. I couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. The pain was too much. I couldn't hold on. And then everything went dark. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and faintly like regret. I was propped up in a bed, the sterile white sheets pulled tightly around my body, my right leg wrapped in bandages, and an eerie, heavy silence. A constant thrum of beeping machines filled the air, but nothing felt real. I was numb, not just physically, though my body was wrecked, but emotionally, too. I had been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, but I couldn't remember how I got here. The crash. The pain. Angela's face. Everything was a blur. I tried to piece it together, but my mind kept failing me, and my thoughts circled back to the same question. Why was I here alone? Angela was nowhere to be found. The person I thought I loved, the one I'd spent the last 6 years with, was gone. She'd left. I remembered her saying she was going to get help, but in the end, it wasn't help she sought. I was left behind. The door creaked open, and I blinked, pulling myself from my haze. Dylan walked in, his face a mixture of relief and something darker, a hard look I wasn't used to seeing on him. He'd been my dive partner for years, and we had shared everything, life, research, triumphs. But now, seeing him standing there, his expression pinched, I knew something had shifted. "Dylan," I croaked, trying to sit up, but the pain in my leg hit me like a freight train. I let out a low groan and sank back against the pillow. "Easy, man. Easy," Dylan said, his voice low. He stepped closer, then pulled a chair up beside my bed. "You're gonna be okay. You just need time." I nodded, unsure if I believed him. The wreck had done more than just break my leg. It had broken something inside me, too. My life had changed in that moment, but I wasn't sure if it was for the better or worse. I'd never imagined it could be like this. I had been so focused on the work, so obsessed with my research and my career, that I had missed the signs. Angela had been slipping away for months, and I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dylan paused, his jaw tightening. "She left, man. After the crash. I don't know where she went. I looked for her, but there was nothing." The words hit me hard, like an explosion. The air in my chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. "She left?" I asked, barely able to form the sentence. "Yeah," Dylan said, his eyes meeting mine. "She didn't stay. She didn't call anyone. She didn't even leave a note. Just disappeared." I closed my eyes. I had always thought we were a team, but now it was clear. Angela had made her choice. And it wasn't me. Something in me shifted. I wasn't going to let this go. I couldn't. "I'm gonna make her pay for this," I said, the words coming out more forcefully than I'd intended. Dylan leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "Jacob, don't. You don't want to go down that road. She's not worth it." But the fire inside me was already burning too brightly. "You didn't see her, Dylan. She blamed me for the crash. She said it was my fault. She left me here, alone. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do. Not with this." Dylan's face softened a little, but he didn't say anything. I could tell he didn't want to support the idea, but he knew me well enough to see that I wasn't backing down. "You can't just let this go." "Not now," I muttered, a plan already forming in my mind. "I'm going to take everything from her. I'm going to make sure everyone knows who she really is." Dylan exhaled, looking down at his hands for a moment, before meeting my gaze again. "I get it. I do. But you need to be careful, man. Revenge isn't the answer. It's going to eat you alive if you let it. She's already done enough. Don't let her take your soul, too." I shook my head. "She's taken everything else. What else do I have left to lose?" That night, as I lay in the hospital bed, the idea of revenge didn't feel like a passing thought. It was my new purpose. I could feel the anger building in me, mixing with the pain. I was no longer just Jacob, the marine biologist. I was Jacob, the man who had been betrayed. It wasn't just about the crash. It wasn't just about my leg. It was about everything she had taken from me. She had stolen my trust, my love, my belief in people, and now she had taken my future as a diver, as a scientist. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this. Not without consequences. I knew what I had to do. It was just after dawn when I got the call. I had spent the last few days in the hospital, my leg slowly healing, but my heart and mind feeling broken in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd been working with my attorney, Marissa, Dylan, and my dad, who had been an insurance adjuster in his youth. They all tried to keep me calm, tried to talk sense into me, but I could feel the pressure building inside. I couldn't let it go. Not after everything. When the call came, I wasn't ready for it. But I couldn't say I wasn't expecting it. "Jacob," my lawyer's voice was sharp but comforting. Angela filed. "She's trying to say the brakes on the SUV failed. She's telling everyone it wasn't her fault. She's calling it an accident. I felt my blood go cold. What do you mean, an accident? I asked, my voice tight with fury. She's trying to play the victim? Marissa paused, clearly bracing for my reaction. Yes, she's claiming that the crash was caused by faulty brakes, and that you were distracted by a phone call from one of your colleagues when it happened. The witnesses are going to contradict her. We have the hospital reports, your injuries. I don't care about the reports, I cut her off, my heart pounding. I care about the fact that she left me there. I care about the fact that she ran from us. She's blaming everything on me. I could hear the frustration in Marissa's voice as she tried to calm me down. Listen to me, Jacob. We'll get to the bottom of this. We have evidence. We have photos. This is more than just a legal case. It's about getting the truth out. You need to focus on what's important. I felt the anger build in my chest, like a knot tightening, but there was no turning back. What's important is making her pay for what she's done. I don't care about her story. I want her to understand that I'm not just a mistake she can walk away from. I want everyone to know who she really is. Marissa didn't reply right away. I could hear her exhale softly. I understand how you feel. But don't let this take over everything. Don't let it become all-consuming. You have a chance to rebuild your life. The truth was, I wasn't sure I could rebuild. The anger was all I had left. I'm filing a lawsuit, I said, my voice firm. A negligence and defamation lawsuit. I want her to lose everything. There was a long pause. I could hear her shuffling papers. You're sure about this? I'm sure. You'll file it, right? Yeah, I'll file it. We'll get the papers ready. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my ears. The decision had been made. There was no going back now. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, signatures, and strategizing. I met with Marissa several times, and with Dylan, who had always been there for me. We started gathering evidence, the hospital records, photos of the wreck, voice recordings of Angela's contradictory statements. But what hit hardest was when I found out through Dylan's cybersecurity friend that Angela had been sending angry messages about me behind my back, messages that were laced with contempt. I don't know how I can keep pretending with him, one of her texts read. He's a cripple now. He'll never be the man he was. How am I supposed to want that? It took everything I had not to screen. How had I ever been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? But the proof was there, and I was going to make sure the world saw it. I wasn't going to let her destroy me, not like she thought she could. Not without facing the consequences. A few days after we filed, I heard from Angela. She called me from an unknown number, sounding shocked. Jacob, what the hell is wrong with you? You're suing me? You're really doing this? I could hear her voice crack at the edges. You've lost your mind. I just wanted to move on. Why do you have to ruin everything? Move on. I repeated, my voice ice cold. You don't get to just move on, Angela. Not after what you did to me. You left me. You blamed me for everything. You don't get to walk away from this. She was quiet for a moment. I could feel the tension building. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of it. I just what? I cut her off. I just cared too much? I just existed? You didn't want me. She let out a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Jacob, but I never wanted things to go like this. Yeah, well, I said, my voice sharp, I'm not sorry anymore. Days passed, but I felt a strange calm begin to settle in. I wasn't the man I used to be, but I was starting to realize that maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. I wasn't just letting her walk away. I wasn't just letting the betrayal slide anymore. Angela was blindsided when the lawsuit hit the news. Her influencer status tanked. Brands dropped her like a hot potato, and online forums exploded with people sharing their opinions. She was exposed. I felt a rush of satisfaction as I watched her world implode. She had played me for a fool, but now I had the upper hand. And I wasn't going to stop until I had taken everything she ever took from me. The sound of the gavel striking echoed in my mind long after the courtroom fell silent. Angela's lawyer had tried to make her look like the victim, spinning her story about how she was overwhelmed and just acting out of frustration that night. They painted her as a woman who had been driven to the brink, struggling with the weight of a relationship she couldn't handle anymore. They even pulled out the classic, he was so consumed by his research excuse. But it didn't take long for the cracks in her story to start showing. I had done my homework, and so had Marissa. We had every piece of evidence, hospital reports, witness statements, photographs of the wreckage, and text from Angela herself that painted her as nothing less than a heartless, manipulative person. Her affair, her calls to friends where she mocked my injury, and, of course, the things she'd said about me while I was still recovering. It was all there. It wasn't just about the crash anymore. It was about who she really was. My lawyer kept a cool, professional demeanor as the proceedings unfolded, but I could feel the tension in the air. Angela's lawyer tried to discredit the photos and witness accounts, claiming they were taken out of context, that the wreck was truly an accident, and that the evidence against her wasn't solid enough to hold up in court. But with every new piece of evidence Marissa presented, their argument started to crumble. When Angela took the stand, I barely recognized her. Her face was a mask of desperation, eyes red from crying, but her words lacked any real conviction. The prosecutor asked her about the messages she had sent while I was unconscious, about the text mocking me as a cripple and a wounded seal, and it was as if the life drained from her. Her face flushed with anger, but she faltered, stuttering when asked about my injuries. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, her voice shaky. "I was just angry. He didn't listen to me. He didn't care about me." The room went silent, and I could see people in the audience exchanging looks, whispering among themselves. Angela was unraveling before their eyes. But the moment that shifted everything came when Marissa called my mother to the stand. I didn't expect it. I hadn't even discussed it with Marissa, but it was the final move in our strategy. My mother, always the peacemaker, always afraid to rock the boat, had never fully understood the extent of Angela's behavior. She had been too focused on making peace, always thinking things would work out. But when she saw the evidence, her eyes opened. She saw Angela for who she truly was. When Mom testified, I could feel the weight shift in the room. Her voice was firm, and when she spoke about how Angela had let me down, how she had been emotionally neglectful and cruel, it was clear. The courtroom was on our side now. Angela's lawyer tried to salvage it by calling her a victim of circumstances, but the damage was done. My mother's words hit like a hammer, exposing the truth in front of everyone. Angela's whole persona crumbled. The trial ended with Angela agreeing to a settlement. We didn't go all the way to a verdict, but it didn't matter. I'd won. We had the documentation, the testimonies, and the proof. The judge's recommendation was clear. Angela would pay a settlement of $1 million, to be paid over 10 years, with liens on her future sponsorships and assets. Her public image was destroyed. The brands that once lined up to sponsor her now turned their backs, and her social media followers, many of whom had been devoted, began to unravel her carefully curated world. They flooded her posts with anger, betrayal, and questions. It was beautiful, in a way. I wasn't a victim anymore. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. A week later, I packed my things and left the house and the keys. It was time for a new start. I couldn't stay there anymore, haunted by memories of Angela and the life I had lost. Dylan, who had been my rock through all of this, was the first person to help me move into my new place, a specially adapted floating lab designed for marine researchers with mobility challenges. It was everything I needed and more. A fresh start. "Guess we're both starting over," Dylan said, clapping me on the back as we looked out over the water. I smiled, looking out at the horizon. "Yeah, but this time, I'm in control." The salty air felt different now, like it was mine. I'd spent the last few years lost in the currents, pulled under by everything around me, my research, my work, my relationship with Angela, but now, I was the one navigating. The floating lab was everything I needed. It wasn't big, but it was perfect for someone like me, someone who needed space but also craved the comfort of being surrounded by the ocean. I spent my days doing what I loved, studying marine life, but now there was a new purpose behind it. My life was no longer about proving anything to anyone. It was just about me. The lab had been adapted for mobility challenges, with ramps and spaces wide enough for me to get around with my prosthetic. The mornings were my favorite. Waking up to the sound of waves crashing gently against the hull, the warmth of the sun creeping through the porthole. I'd make my coffee, grab my tablet, and dive straight into work. It was a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. And it wasn't just the work. I had a new mission now, something bigger than my own healing. Dylan, who had stood by me through it all, was still around, helping with the occasional dive or research task when I needed him. But the real change had been the people I started to meet. I found a whole community of adaptive divers, people who had been through some of the same struggles, the same grief and anger, but who had fought back in their own ways. They were finding new ways to explore the underwater world, and they inspired me to think about how I could use my research to help others with mobility challenges. Then there was Camille. She was a prosthetics engineer I met at a conference, a tiny woman with an unshakable confidence and a laugh that could light up any room. Camille had helped design the prosthetic I was wearing now. When I told her about my plans to lead adaptive diving tours for injured veterans, she jumped on board immediately, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "This is exactly what I've been waiting to see," she said, as we sat on the deck of the lab one evening, watching the sunset. She wasn't just an engineer. She was someone who understood what it meant to feel broken and to rise from it. Over the next few months, we worked together to create something new, a hydrodynamic prosthetic designed specifically for underwater movement. It wasn't just about making something functional. It was about making it feel natural. We tested, retested, and refined, sometimes pushing the limits of what we thought was possible, but always pushing forward. We also started taking veterans out on adaptive dives. The first time I saw them, nervous but determined, gearing up to dive into the waters, something in me clicked. These men and women had faced so much, but there they were, ready to embrace the ocean, ready to face a new challenge. It wasn't about their injuries, it was about their courage. And it was about mine, too. My leg no longer defined me. It wasn't a symbol of what I had lost. It was a testament to what I had gained. Camille and I started to build something beautiful. Together, we weren't just designing prosthetics. We were designing a future. A future where people didn't have to give up on their passions just because life had thrown them a curveball. One afternoon, after a dive with a group of veterans, Camille and I sat on the edge of the lab, our feet dangling over the water. She turned to me, a smile on her face. "You know, Jacob, I think we're onto something big here." I grinned, feeling a deep, familiar sense of peace. "Yeah, I think we are." I didn't expect her to show up, but somehow, part of me always knew she would. The day started like any other. I spent the morning diving, checking in on a few new research spots I'd marked on the map. Camille had joined me, of course, her new prosthetic design making her glide effortlessly through the water like a fish. The veterans we'd been training were improving each day, and every time I saw them overcome their fears and doubts, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't known in a long time. But the quiet, peaceful rhythm of my new life shattered the moment I saw her. Angela. She stood at the dock, hesitant, as if unsure of what to do, just standing there watching me. The sun was setting behind her, casting a long shadow across the water. She was different now, her once flawless appearance now marred by deep scars, her eyes hollow, like she had aged a lifetime in the months since the trial. I was frozen for a moment, my heart skipping. The anger, the hurt, it all came rushing back, but so did the memories. The moments we shared, the moments I had spent convincing myself that I was enough, that we were enough. But I had moved on. I had built something real, something that mattered. And yet, there she was, back in my life like some unfinished chapter one couldn't ignore. I stood still, my prosthetic foot digging into the wood of the dock as I steadied myself. "What do you want, Angela?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. It felt strange to hear it so steady, so devoid of the rage that had once consumed me. Angela stepped closer, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but she didn't speak for a moment. Instead, she just looked at me. I didn't think you'd be here. I thought you'd be gone," she finally said, her voice shaking. I raised an eyebrow. "Gone? You think I'd just leave?" She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "I thought you'd leave after the lawsuit, after everything. I thought you would just give up, Jacob." Her words were heavy, and the guilt behind them was palpable. She looked as though she regretted what had happened, but I wasn't sure if it was because of the pain she caused me or because it had all unraveled in front of everyone. I sighed, shaking my head slowly. "You thought wrong. I'm not the one who runs away anymore, Angela. That's you." She flinched at my words, and I could see her resolve start to crumble. I didn't mean for it to go this way. I was scared, Jacob. I was terrified. I wasn't ready for what you became." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "I thought you'd always be the person I could depend on. But when things got hard, when you were so consumed with your work and your passion, I felt alone, and I didn't know how to handle it." I exhaled sharply, my hands gripping the railing of the dock. "You didn't handle it at all. You left. You made your choice, Angela." "I know," she said quickly, her voice raw. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hurt you, Jacob. I know I did." I studied her, not with the same fury I'd felt back in court, but with a sort of distant disbelief. I was seeing her for what she truly was, broken, lost, and unable to fix what she'd broken. She continued, her voice trembling. I've lost everything. I've lost my brand, my reputation. People turned on me. I have nothing left, Jacob. I was wrong. I should have supported you, been with you. And now I see that. But it's too late. I didn't respond immediately. My mind was spinning, conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to walk away, tell her to leave, and never come back. She had abandoned me, used me, mocked me. On the other hand, I felt something else, a mixture of pity and exhaustion. I had already moved on from the person she had been in my life. And yet, standing in front of me was the woman I once thought I'd build a future with, now nothing more than a shell of her former self. Angela, I finally said, my voice firm but softer than I expected, you can't undo what you did. You can't just walk back in here and think everything's going to be fine. I've moved on. I'm not that person anymore. She stared at me, her face crumbling as tears welled up in her eyes. I understand, she whispered. I do. I've destroyed everything. For a moment, the old ache stirred in my chest. I thought about the person I used to be, how she had been my world, how I had given her everything, only for her to turn her back on me. But that was before. Now, I was someone different, stronger, wiser, and I couldn't let her ruin that. I shook my head slowly, the words coming out with finality. No, Angela, you didn't destroy everything. You just changed it. I've got a new life now, one I'm building for myself. She nodded slowly, Her shoulders slumped. I understand. I'm sorry, Jacob. I really am. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The past was the past. And now, I had a future to look forward to, a future I wasn't going to let her drag me back from. The next morning, as I went through my routine, something inside me clicked. Angela had come to seek closure, but I had already closed that chapter. Now, I had to keep moving forward. There was no more space for her in my world. And I was finally okay with that. It was a rainy afternoon when Camille surprised me with the new leg. We'd been working on the hydrodynamic prosthetic for months, refining it piece by piece, testing it with the veterans, adjusting it for my needs. But this was different. Camille stood in front of me holding a small, sleek box wrapped in ocean blue paper, her face full of excitement. I know you've been waiting for the new design, she said, her voice light. But I couldn't resist. I raised an eyebrow, half amused, half curious. What is this? You'll see, she grinned. Go ahead, open it. I tore the wrapping away, revealing a prosthetic leg, only this one was different. It was sleek, designed with a subtle wave pattern carved into the surface, the design flowing from the thigh down to the foot. Embedded in the pattern were tiny LED lights that illuminated softly when I ran my fingers over them. I looked up at Camille, stunned. This is incredible. It's your new leg shell, she said, her voice almost shy now. A tribute to your work, to your legacy. You've done so much for this field, Jacob. It only seemed right to make something that reflects that. Something that tells the story of where you've been and where you're going. I could barely speak, the lump in my throat growing. This wasn't just a prosthetic. It was an extension of everything I'd become, a symbol of resilience and strength. Thank you, I whispered. This means more than you know. She smiled softly, her eyes glowing with pride. I know. I wanted you to have something that felt like you, not just a piece of equipment. Something that's part of your journey. A few days later, I put it on for the first time. It felt like something brand new, something that finally fit, not just physically but emotionally. I took my first few steps, feeling the power of the new design, the lights flickering gently beneath me, as if my past was guiding me into my future. Later that week, I stood before a group of veterans on a school outreach trip, showing them the new leg. A young boy approached me, his eyes wide with wonder. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen, he said, pointing at the glowing patterns on the leg. I smiled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the injured man or the broken scientist. I felt proud of who I had become, of what I had achieved. And I knew, deep down, that this legacy, was just the beginning.